Yeah, my wife, when she found out we were doing the whole Indiana Jones series, she goes, "Oh, that's Matt Green." At high school, that is what I knew Matt Green as, was Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
So it's
Would that make you Sulla?
No.
Short round.
Yeah, I was short round.
Short round.
More round than short,
You call
but
him
short
Dr.
round than
Jones.
Loz.
Short
You call
round
him
or
Dr.
Willie.
Jones.
Yeah,
Willie. Yeah, I can see
sometimes
Willie.
Marcus.
Yeah.
Sometimes Marcus.
Oh, yes, Marcus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
But
speaking
do
of-
you realize, by the way, you wore your Indiana Jones during our Star Wars series?
Wait, what?
You wore your Indiana Jones
This shirt?
during-
Yeah, I did.
Mhm. Okay. Just
Yeah. He's like, Star Wars might be good,
yeah.
but Indy's better.
Yeah, this is better.
Well, listen.
I'm glad we started with my favorite show first.
Yeah. And it's a movie. But,
Wow.
That's a good point.
It's a movie.
I'm the director.
I have my film production hat on. It's a movie.
That's funny. All right, I walked into that one. But that was great. So yeah, Raiders Lost Ark is
No, is that what we're here for?
I know. Actually, it's actually a roast.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about the movie.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
I see dead people.
Hasta la vista, baby.
You can't handle the truth!
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first in the long series of Indiana Jones films. This is Reel Profs Classics, and so we're going to talk about, over the next few weeks, the Indiana Jones trilogy, because we're going to assume that the final two did not exist. Or at least we're not going to acknowledge it.
Well, we've done the final one.
Oh, we did, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yep. So we're just...
That's right. We're skipping
missing,
Crystal Skulls.
Yep.
Yeah. You're welcome, audience. Okay, so let's get it. Everybody knows this movie. It's a classic.
Mm-hmm.
It reinvented the action picture. One of the things that I love about this movie is if you look at action pictures after 1981, typically your villain was not the identical opposite of your hero, which is what Belloq is. They're the same guy. Just one went down this path and one went down this path. Yep. And typically the female character was not, wasn't a self-starter, didn't have her own kind of gravitas to her. It reinvented.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, I've seen it before. Yeah, you've seen it before because of Raiders. And everybody just mimicked it afterwards. It's a great, great movie. And these first three films, I think, have a lot of really interesting stuff. So let's kind of get into it. What would you guys say is the central message of Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah, I think as I watched it again, because I've seen it many times, and watching it again just to refresh, I think what comes to mind is the pursuit of power through controlling God.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, good wins out, right? So it's like this, there, at all costs, we must get this ark to be able to control it, to use the power for whatever we want.
Right.
And then in the end, Indy wins out. And
But what I like about how Indy wins out in the end is
he doesn't really do it.
He doesn't do it,
Yep.
right? It's, again, God's power basically wiping out all those that have basically tried to misuse the Ark of the Covenant, right?
Yeah.
Which is cool because in the other Indy films, it's not so much that. It's usually him kind of doing something.
Yep.
But in this one, it's kind of an interesting ending.
Yeah, he's the reluctant hero that gets bailed out by the Ark kind of idea.
Right. And again, so there's a lot of similarities between Indiana Jones and James Bond, except that Indiana Jones, like you just said, is the reluctant hero, where he's thrust into these situations. He's a professor by day, which is what we are. So it makes me wonder, wow, okay, I really may be a real-life Indiana Jones.
Well, I am.
You are. You're
No, I'm
dressed.
just
Look
kidding.
at you.
Yeah.
I know.
That's right.
I mean, I
He's
grabbed
gone
the
to
fedora.
archaeological sites.
You go to
I
Israel.
go to Israel, right?
You go
I
to
go
Greece,
to
Turkey.
Turkey and Greece, yeah.
That's right. That's right, right.
He came
New
back
Jersey.
with a black eye the last time, I
New
think.
Jersey.
New Jersey. Well, there you go.
There's a lot of artifacts
That's
there.
right. That's right. None that you want to put in a museum.
No.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is as we look at it, is that there's a real sense of Indy moving from an unbeliever to a believer, not in the traditional Christian sense, but just believing.
Yeah, I think he's agnostic, right?
Yeah, he moves from I don't believe in hocus pocus magic type of stuff to like at the end, he's like, "Shut your eyes!"
Yeah.
Like he believes, he knows,
Yeah,
like,
he
and,
understood.
and he's like, as if shutting your eyes is gonna, stop the
power of
angels from killing you,
Right.
But yeah, so I think, and even like a number of years ago, or I don't remember how long ago it was. There's this whole thing where his manuscript of the script
Harrison
came out,
Ford's script came out, and
where he writes, "Is Indy a believer?"
so, and he specifically
Yeah.
made the note on the scene where Indy is talking to the government men, and he says to them, it's the power of God. Didn't any of you ever go to Sunday school? And they're like, oh, what?
Right.
And so he wrote in there, "Is Indy a true believer?"
Yep.
Which again, back to that. I think he believes that there is a power.
Yeah.
And you see that through all of the three films that we're going to discuss.
Yeah.
But never a reverence.
No,
Right.
Never a reverence, never a devotion, never a love, never a. So he's not a true believer in the sense that we would say a believer as Christians, but a believer in a higher power.
That's right.
Yep.
That there's spiritual aspects to this world. So he's not like the archaeologist who is just evolutionary. Like there's no spiritual component. It's just a bunch of artifacts and dirt and things like that. He's more of like. He grows into the understanding of the spiritual component of the world that he lives in.
Now that leads into, let's kind of talk about, there's three, the differing worldviews. We've got Indy, we've got Belloq, and then we've got the Nazis. And they're kind of three different worldviews in regards to how they view the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah. Indy wants it for a museum.
That's right.
Belloq wants it for fame and glory. And the Nazis want it to control the world.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just, it divides down that line. And I think what you point out is that Indy is Belloq. He's the good. He chooses to be the good side. Belloq chooses to be the evil side. And so you see that here, and then you really start to, as a promo for their next one, you really see that in Temple of Doom.
Totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's those components for sure.
Which makes the ending really interesting because here you've got a Jewish ritual going on, being done by a French, probably atheist, and then you've got the Nazis,
Filming it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, ready to take the power to conquer the world.
That's right.
Being one that studies such things as the Ark and the High Priest, and because I teach Old Testament books and things like that, you have this dude wearing the ephod and the breastplate of judgment with the 12 stones, but in his hand is a staff that is three-headed goat, and that's not a part of any aspect of the High Priest. And it's like there's a mixture of paganism in there because, I'm not going to get conspiratorial, but goats, those are connected with the occult.
Right.
Totally. And even in this movie, they talk about the Nazis and Hitler in particular are invested in the occult. So it seems like a degrading of the high priestly function. Not only is he not Jewish and he's not from the tribe of Levi and he's not from the line of Aaron, but the fact is, like, he's not even wearing, like, holy to Yahweh crown that's on it, or the turban, or any of those things that are key to being the high priest. And so I like looking at it, having that background in understanding, like, wow, this is different. Now, as a kid, I didn't notice any of that.
Sure.
I just was like, this guy's face is melting off.
But it does make sense, and it also because if they are the occult, the Nazis, they're evil, wanting the power of God.
Yep.
So to have that, like we talked about the reverence, it's not going to be there. They are going to degrade it. So it actually pretty good cinematic move there on their part, I think.
Yeah, Indy's big, I think, motivation throughout all the films is, again, he says this over and over, it belongs in a museum, right? He sees these things as historical artifacts, not really as a representation of the creator.
Yeah, he's mad at the end. He's like that. They just stuck it away in a warehouse, and he wants it on display.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
He wants to be a good steward of history.
Right. Let's talk about what's portrayed as good, noble. Any actions or characteristics of Indiana Jones presented as heroic, virtuous? I think, he's kind of known for that, right?
Yeah.
Sacrifice.
One of the things, in this culture, in this day and age, it's toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
But he shows like a real form of masculinity. He's brave, he's fearless, he's a leader, he will sacrifice. I mean, he even goes back and swims over and gets on the sub, right, to save Marion and probably get the Ark too.
Right.
And so you have...
Yet he's willing to give up the Ark for Marion at the end.
Exactly.
Right?
And so I think there's definitely some good characteristic traits. That's why we look to Indy. That's why we're like, yeah, I like him. He's a good hero. He's not the perfect hero. He's definitely got his warts, but he's the quintessential good guy.
Totally.
Which
is why so many dudes are drawn to him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about good versus evil. What are some ways that that's distinguished? Again, anytime you have the Nazis, you have a pretty clear villain.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't even have to do anything.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. The guy wears black and he speaks in a German accent. Okay, yeah.
That was my easy question,
I mean, even
by the way.
that's
Sorry,
funny.
I tried to put a T-ball up
right.
for frills every once in a while, but yeah.
Nazis.
I mean, and even like when he comes in to question Marion, right? And he takes out this what looks to be a weapon.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then he just like something that's sinister and he just folds it up into a coat hanger.
Right.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that moment too was originally. Have you ever seen the Spielberg film 1941?
No.
Mm-mm.
No. Have you heard of it?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. So he made this big comedy before Raiders. This big budget. Everybody in the world was in the movie. It was a huge bomb, financial bomb, and it was a gag that he wanted to use in that and couldn't make it work. And so then when he came on over and did Raiders, he's like, "Oh, you could do this."
Yeah.
And it is a great moment.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I love, speaking of Raiders, I love the fact that there are call-outs to Star Wars in the Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And because even Spielberg tips his hat off to the best 3 movies ever made.
There's a C-3PO and R2-D2.
Yep, in the hieroglyphics.
Hieroglyphics, that's right.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies, especially when you can see it on the big screen, that really has no ounce of fat in terms of it just moves. And I love being able to show it to students just from a cinematic standpoint because it's just such a well-crafted film. But worldview-wise, so much going on with all 3 films. Any final thoughts on the film?
Yeah, I think when you look at it from a biblical perspective, there's an interesting parallel that happens. So the way that the movie presents the Ark is like a good luck charm for military power, right? And then people decide to look in it, and they are like melted and like shot through with like
laser beams,
angelic lasers. But you do see that in 1 Samuel chapter 4, right? The Israelites go and they go to battle the Philistines, and they lose, and so they're like, oh, we'll come bring the Ark, and then we'll win. Well, if they're losing, that means they're in covenant disobedience, right? So they just treat God as if he's a lucky rabbit's foot to come and help them win the battle. And then they get defeated, and the Philistines take the Ark, right? And it goes into Philistia, and it does some things there. The Philistines are like, get this thing out of here. And they send it to Beit Shemesh. And those guys look into the Ark, again, not treating it as holy, and 50,000 of them die in 1 Samuel chapter 6. And so what you see is like the way that people approach God, because the Ark was meant to be not this military power weapon. It was the very presence of God. It's where the Shekinah glory dwelt. It's even called the footstool of God, right? It's his place where he meets with Israel in Exodus 29. It's the place of atonement and forgiveness, right? There's a lot of biblical symbolism that goes beyond just mere let's try to manipulate God to get what we want. No. But what you see is that the Israelites actually do that. They try to manipulate God to get what they want, and they treat him as something, as like a curiosity type of thing, and God will be treated as holy. And I think this movie doesn't really show that. It shows you the way that Israel treated Yahweh in an improper way. It doesn't talk about his holiness and righteousness and how we approach him. But I think that there's some good things to think about just from a biblical perspective of how you even think about the Ark.
Yeah. Well, and then again, for us as Christ followers now, practically speaking, how we think about God, because I think a lot of us sometimes we do treat God that way as a rabbit's foot, like, okay,
Exactly.
Lord, time's rough. If you could just, pray, as opposed to being thankful in all times and praying in all times and having a reverence. But that's where that comes from, right? When your view of God is shifted.
Yep, he's here to help me.
That's right.
It's not that I'm a Christ follower. He's a Jason helper type of thing. And I think we all can trend towards that if we don't look at God as holy, righteous, the God who is worthy to be praised and followed. I think the lucky rabbit's foot is a very real issue for us.
Yeah. I also think the fear of God they present in a different way, or not in a different way, how a lot of people look at God like this big, scary beast that can just kill me at the moment's notice, right? You see that kind of presented throughout this film. Not so much in one we'll talk about later, I don't think. But yeah, this one I can remember watching as a kid and being like, oh, don't mess with God, man. He's just going to wipe you out. So I think they kind of did a wrong view of the fear of God.
Yeah. Well, and I think there is a sense that you cannot take God as something as insignificant, that he demands that we tremble at his presence, right? I mean, we are creatures. He is the creator. But that also needs to be balanced with the rest of Revelation about God, right? And I think that's the key point.
Thank you for listening to Reel Profs, a production of the Center for Thinking Biblically. To support this ministry, please visit thinkbiblically.org/donate. To learn more about the Masters University on-campus and online undergraduate and graduate programs, visit masters.edu.